Welcome to this Fathom interview. I'm Omer-Jackaman, Deputy Editor, and as part of our special issue highlighting the work of ALMEP, the Alliance for Middle East Peace, I'm delighted to be joined today by Mohammad Darawshe and Michal Sela, Director of Strategy and Executive Director, respectively, of Givat Haviva, an Israeli civil society organization focused on social change. Mohammad, Michal, welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure being with you.
We're going to talk in a bit about the events of October 7th and their aftermath, but perhaps we could begin with your briefly explaining the work of Givat Haviva and where it fits within the overall picture of civil society and peace building in Israel-Palestine.
So Givat Haviva is a shared society organization, a Jewish and Arab shared society organization. Basically, what we're doing is we try to work on the relationships between Jews and Arabs within Israel, all citizens of Israel. And in order to do that, we understand that we also need to work for equality between all citizens of Israel. We think it's the two sides of the same kind of work. And we do that because we think it's the only way for Israel to actually prosper and to be a better democracy and a better place to live in. We're doing that mainly through education, culture, and language. So, for instance, we're responsible for most of the Jewish and Arab encounters in the education system in Israel for youth, for young students, but also for their teachers. So we have a lot of teachers training and these kind of activities. And I think that in the last few years, we also look at the education system from a more, let's say, strategic way. So we also work with the system itself and with the ministry itself to try to change and shift and to fix the system where we can in order to allow our kids to get their rights and to get the right education, the right shared society education, so they can be productive and positive citizens in Israel.
If I may add, Jack, we actually try to fulfill the promise of the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel, which promised social and political equality for Arab citizens. And along the years, many agencies in the government forgot to work on that. And Israel still maintains a separate educational system. And we also have a separate residential system for Jewish and Arab citizens, where the norm is that four people do not meet. And we try to engineer those meeting points as early as possible through educational opportunities, but also we try to develop the content on how these meetings can be handled so that we develop the pedagogic structure so that those meetings are fruitful and productive and they do not, become some kind of a shouting match and counterproductive.
Thank you both. And how has the work of shared society organizations like yours been affected over the last 100 days? Has it been a time for reassessing existing ideas or rather for reasserting the models you already know work well?
That's an interesting question. I think a bit of both. That's what I would say. Because first of all, of course, it affected our work. It affected all levels of work and lives in Israel, and especially everything that is concerned to the relationships between Jews and Arabs, and also the treatment or the feeling or the everyday lives of Arab citizens within Israel. So one thing that we changed, for instance, is that on October 8th, we got to the office. We were all shocked, right? And that was supposed to be our first day, the first day of our activity, of the activity in the year, because it's the first day after the Jewish holidays. So actually, that's when the year actually starts. And we were expecting thousands of youth in October, November, and December to come to Givat Haviva for encounters program, or all kind of educational programs. But we understood very quickly that it's not going to happen. And we still thought that all kids in Israel deserve education for shared society and education for democracy. But we also thought and figured that the schools will not be willing to come for encounters programs. In like a week or two, all of the schools started to cancel the reservations. So what we did is we actually built a new program, which we call a uninational program. Okay, you can just call it a national program, where we offer shared society education and programs and democracy building programs for national groups. So we still think that the main values can be taught and can be dealt with groups, but Jewish groups and Arab groups. So we're working with Arab schools, and we're coming to them with a mixed team, right, with Jewish and Arab coordinators. So they do have some kind of like a sense of meeting the other because they have an Arab or a Jewish coordinator, but they're working within the school. So that's kind of like a shift that we did, but we're still going to get, that's what we hope, it's still going to get the same outcomes, and we're going to still affect the Israeli society in the same way. But also we have other programs that remain the same. For instance, our teacher training programs. So we have a pretty big program of Jewish teachers teaching in Arab schools. They're teaching spoken Hebrew. And all of these teachers, not all of them, but like except two, all of them return to class. And we're working with them and with the principals of the schools and the kids. So these kind of programs actually stay the same. And we think that it was very, very important that we had the skill as an organization to keep this, project going, although the circumstances really changed.
I would add also that, in this kind of crisis situation, we shift mood. And traditionally we are in conflict management and conflict resolution programs, and now we are in crisis management. And in crisis management, first of all, you need to protect your clientele, so to speak. The people that you've been working with, you don't want them to suddenly disappear as a result of the disappearance of the organization that maybe feel at loss. So we need to show that we're not at loss, that our concept, our theory stands even during time of crisis. And to do that, you need to be available for people. You need to show your face. You need to knock on their doors and say, how can we help you? And one of those incidents was in the fact that we turned our campus into a temporary shelter for evacuees from towns surrounding Gaza, towns that people that were evacuated from their homes. And traditionally, kibbutzim are our first clientele, so to speak. They are within the Jewish community, and for us to have the place to be able to knock on their door the day after for activities in Jewish-Arab relations, we need to attend to their needs. The same thing also with Bedouin communities, which we called on them in the Negev, and we offered them a place to stay, a safe place to stay during crisis time. So being available for your potential target audience to answer their needs maintains the legitimacy of the organization to engage on the cross-conflict or cross-cultural activities afterwards. Overall, I think that we've been very successful in maintaining our strong relationship, including also with government agencies, advising them of what needs to be done and becoming sort of the guiding star of where should the government agencies, how should they operate? What are the red flags that we need to raise? Whether it is the problem in the employment arena, where many Arab citizens were being discharged from workplace, many Arab students were being expelled from universities, and very harsh sense of polarization and mistrust that developed between the two communities. We took this to government agencies, to the president's office, asking leadership, both Jewish and Arab leadership, to step in the situation and to try to give alternative messages that decrease the accumulated sense of mistrust, to show that there is a leadership that is pulling us in the positive direction, and we're not left alone just to the forces of violence and the forces of polarization that are trying to drag us into that direction. So speaking out, being present, raising the red flags, and sometimes taking initiative. We held the conference of the 23 organizations that are working on placement of Arab employees in the Jewish workplaces to understand, assess the situation, and come with the needed skills that will allow them to engage in real time. We held another conference in which we had many significant community and political and cultural and business leaders that told the Jewish and the Arab citizens in Israel, you're not alone, you're not orphans in this field. All of the civil society organizations active in this field to show that we have certain leaders that still carry our message and are willing to be on main platforms and echo it even in time of crisis, so that our message is relevant also at this time.
I think, if I may add to that, I think that we found ourselves as Israelis in a very weird situation where we feel that the threat of violence is around us, and things can deteriorate really, really quickly. And that's a situation where you expect your leadership to try to calm things down, right? But actually what happened, and that's very interesting, is that the political leadership, the government and the coalition actually tried to nudge the Arab society to be violent, in a way to try to start these little fires between Jews and Arabs in mixed cities, in mixed neighborhoods, in mixed regions, to try to spread fake news about it, right? So it was very, very important to try to also affect the discourse, to try to give another discourse, to try to maybe strengthen the forces that are that can ease the tension, right?
Thank you. I mean, and I'm touching on that. Despite those, despite such incitement, the general pattern, and this is borne out by polling, I think even including polling for your own institution, seems to have reported fairly unprecedented and extraordinarily high Arab-Israeli levels of kind of national identification. Perhaps you could explain for our viewers some of those statistics and some of those sort of trends that have been going on in that community, and potentially your kind of explanations as to why we've seen that.
Very often polls done during crisis time with high levels of fear and high levels of tension, you get distorted results. And there's a phenomenon which is called appeasement. You try to please the interviewer. And that's why, we should take polls with some kind of, some grain of salt, as they say. But overall, there are some interesting trends. 85% of Arab citizens oppose the attack of Hamas on October 7th. 70% felt that their sense of Israeli identity got strengthened. So now, even if there is some kind of appeasement trend there, these are still very significant numbers that can show a mindset. And I think that actions speak more than polls. The big action is that we're already 104 days into the war, and the Arab citizens have been behaving with a great sense of responsibility and refusing to get pulled into the conflict, as some people from the Israeli right-wing, extreme right-wing, are trying to provoke that, and Arab citizens are saying, we're not going to get provoked that easily. And there were even calls from some of the leaders of Hamas to Arab citizens to engage in violence against Jews, to try to widen the front and maybe make life easier for Hamas in their war with Israel. And also to that, not only that the Arab public did not get dragged into this, but there were positions of Arab leaders in Israel that said, no, thank you. We have to protect our relationship with the state. We have to protect our relationship with our fellow Jewish citizens, and we're not going to, by choice, go into this direction. And we're managing to maintain Jewish-Arab relations without physical confrontation. That doesn't mean that the result is increased sense of hope and increased sense of kinship that is developing. I think that brain sees it. So all of the intellectual decision makers in Israel recognize it and can tell you that something good is happening there. But if you go down and you ask the general public, the sense of mutual mistrust and the sense of a mutual fear between Jews and Arabs in Israel is accumulating to dramatic high levels that we haven't experienced before. That's why I think it's a vested interest to have the war end as quickly as possible, so that we manage to prevent the spillover inside Israel. The repair for Jewish-Arab relations is going to be very, very long and hard as a result of the mutual mistrust without having to do anything. Just the fact that, I wrote an article about this. I called it the fact that our country is at war with our people does not put Arab citizens in good place. And the fact that most Arab citizens do express their Palestinian identity in the Israeli public today does not make Israeli Jews look at Arab citizens that easy, because they see Palestinian identity as the identity of the enemy. So they see Arab citizens as an extension of the enemy, even without having to do anything. Just by the mere self-definition of Arab citizens as part of the Palestinian people makes them some kind of outsiders to the mainstream Israeli Jewish Zionist identity. And that creates a tension that we hope to de-escalate as quickly as possible.
I think it's even more extreme right now when, if we're honest, the levels of anxiety and fear in the Jewish population were never this high in Israel. We're experiencing, in a weird way, I would say almost like a Holocaust-like situation psychologically in the Jewish society. And I think that in this situation, it's very, very hard for the Jewish mainstream to understand or to cope with any complexity, right? To try to understand how a person can care about Israel and Israelis and his co-patriots who are Israelis, but also care about his people and family and friends in Gaza. Which is, when I say it like this, I think it's very easy to understand that something like that can happen, right? A person can care about two different groups. But now in Israel, it's just like these kind of really simple sayings and facts are really, really, really hard to understand.
Thank you both. I think both your comments there are going to apply neatly to our final question, which is a difficult but important one. I mean, when and how the war in Gaza will end, you've said we hope to see it end as soon as possible, but when that happens remains to be seen, and whether in the total defeat of Hamas or not, these things are unknown. What is certain is that in one way or another, we're likely to be looking at a new paradigm in Israel's relationship with the Palestinians, and at a Gaza Strip in profound need of physical and political reconstruction. Can you give us your views? I mean, both Givat Haviva views and yours as individuals on how you'd like to see those processes handled. What are the key factors? Can Givat Haviva principles be applied cross-border as they are domestically?
I can give you my hope. I don't think it will happen that quickly. I don't think Hamas is going to be destroyed, and I hope the war will end as soon as possible, but I'm not sure about it. But my hope is that maybe the paradigm that a conflict can be managed, right? And that a national movement can be destroyed or can vanish in a miraculous way. I hope that that Israelis will understand that that's not going to happen. And also that we will notice, and I think many years will pass until this understanding will land, but that we'll notice that real security is achieved in Israel only through agreements. So we have security in our Egyptian border through agreement. We have security and some trust in the border with Jordan through agreement. And that's the only way we can achieve real security. I think that's like the large paradigm that maybe can rise from this horrible, terrible tragedy in our region. But I have to say that it's my hope, but I do think it will take us a long, long, long time together. Regarding your second question, or the second part of your question, we are working within Israel with Israeli citizens, but I think that dialogue between people and education for understanding the other and accepting the other's narrative, and also allowing the past to stay in the past and look forward, which is something very important in any kind of educational work, but also for me very important in any kind of like positive leadership, is something that is also very, very important for cross-border work. And that's, I think, the essence of what we do within Israel, and we can use these values and these tools also to work with the Palestinian population in the occupied territories or in Palestine.
Mohammad?
I think that the war that we're going through right now is yet another proof that the Givat Haviva model, which stood behind the concept of support of a two-state solution, still stands. Everything was tried except that solution. The option of what they called mowing the grass, keep small enemies, hoping they will not become big, failed. The option of bypassing the Palestinian issue, going to regional peace with the Emirates and Bahrain and God knows who, and Morocco, failed. The option of basically saying that you can manage the conflict without resolving it failed. You need resolution. And I think this is what Givat Haviva has been saying for many, many years, since we established the first Jewish Arab Center for Peace in the Middle East in 1963. We've said that the two-state solution is critical and needed. And it also contributes, by the way, to the nature of Jewish-Arab relations in Israel. I think that we need to, if we want to focus on good relations between Jewish and Arab citizens as citizens, we need to diffuse the national conflict. And the only way to diffuse the national conflict between Israelis and the Palestinians is through a diplomatic solution, which has, been tried and failed because it was, the Oslo process, because it was spread over too much time without proper decisions to move quickly to the end solution that is needed. And in the process, spoilers came in. I do think that the Oslo Agreement, the principle of the Oslo Agreement, was absolutely right. The problem was in the implementation, which was very slow and allowed spoilers to drag it into the opposite direction. And that's what we're missing right now. We're missing a political framework, which makes it very difficult to implement people-to-people activities with Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. I don't think people-to-people activities with Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza is the needed work right now. What you need there is a political framework. And once you have a political framework, then you can start with people-to-people activities.
Michal, Mohammad, thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.